share with you today. I got a lot of notes. I want to share this right off the back because I think it's really important, especially because of the different things that are happening to us and the different things that obviously you may say it's the same, but the different things that we're experiencing. Everybody is not the same. But even if this doesn't happen or wasn't happening, the same things that I'm speaking about today are applicable or are relevant in our everyday lives. And for those of you that know, or you're going to hear what I'm talking about, for those of you that know how important this is, I want to suggest right up front, get a pen and a pad, take some notes. I'm going to also suggest share this out to your groups. If you know someone that needs to be lifted up, you know that someone needs to be maybe given a word that they won't receive from you directly, by all means, tag them, post your questions, make your statements, because I think this message really speaks volumes to a lot of people of various backgrounds, and it doesn't matter where you are. But I do know when you're in the midst of crisis, you got to think with your head on straight. So today's topic is having your back should not be a full-time job. And that's exactly what I mean. Having your back should not be a full-time job. Look, a lot of us, we're struggling. A lot of us, we're fighting to get things done. We're trying extra things to earn money. We're trying to keep our families together. We're dealing with so much, and it can be quite tiresome, quite aggravating and annoying in that process. And then to have to worry about another human being completely, there are exceptions, but to have to worry about another human being in a similar fashion as you would have to care for yourself, that can be draining and stressful, especially if they are a person that's quite able of fending for themselves. Now, that may need to be qualified, but fending for yourself may mean that you got a working brain, you got hands and feet, and you got something to work with. You got skills. You're not a person without common sense, right? So what we need to understand that this relates to family, friends, and colleagues, and maybe it's you. I don't know, right? It should not be a full-time job that someone has to always have your back. Now, should we have each other's back? Absolutely. Friend, family, colleague, it doesn't matter. We should be there for others just as we would like others to be there for us. Because, that's what this world is kind of like made of. The way we were made as human beings, we need other human beings to strive with and to, relate to. However, it's not my responsibility to breathe for you. And, we've got these different stages in life. As we're growing, there's a learning curve, there's a growth curve, there's a learning and growth rate. And, if you don't know, the learning curve is simply, how you learn. Are you a better learning with auditory? Are you a hands-on person, kinesthetic? Are you a person that learns through reading? How do you learn? Everyone's learning curve is different. And like everyone that I'm going to explain, every different way of learning that I'm going to share, some of us, we tap into a little bit of all of them. Although we have a primary way that we like to learn. And we also have a primary way that we're going to grow, right? Everyone's learning everyone's growth curve is different as well. And the growth curve means how much you're growing. Are you growing in small increments or vast increments? Everyone is different. And you can't look at someone that you know or don't know and feel that they should learn a particular way. That's not up to you to decide. It's up to the way they're made, their level of interest, and what they get out of a situation. Also, everyone's learning and growth rate is different. Some people get it just like that, and they're ready to fly. And some people, they get it a little slower. I like reading, but I'm a slow reader. I'm more of a hands-on person as far as it relates to really adaptability. But everyone is different. There's some people that are fast readers. My question is, are you retaining what you read, or are you just a fast reader? You see, for me to retain what I read, I have to read slowly. So again, back to the title, it should not, be my job to have your back 24/7. And I think that's very real. And I think a lot of people have experienced that. But when you look at the learning curve, the growth curve, and the learning and growth rate, the most important thing out of all of that is how those things are combined, and applicability is the end result. Are you able to apply all the things you've learned at the rate that you learn them and at the depth of your learning? Are you able to apply them to a particular thing, to a job, to a craft? You know, just can you take that information and move forward with it where it pays off for you? Okay. So we have to look at, there's a process in life, or a process of life. And no one walks around thinking of this, but it's true. There is a process in life. Up to the age of 7 years old, they say that by the time you're 7, pretty much your personality has been formed. Whether it's a humorous person, a serious person, a sensitive person, whatever it may be, for the most part, as you become an adult, that's how you're going to be as well. Now, of course, there's always exceptions. Nothing is so absolute that every single thing applies to every single human being in every gender. That's not realistic, and that would be an unfair assessment. But that's, pretty much how we are as human beings. Because after you have been born and fed, and you're no longer a newborn, and you're gone past the toddler stage, and you're past the stage where you have your primary learning, it's time for you to function in society. Now, of course, on a lower level, but it's time for you to function in society. And that's just how we are as humans. And one of the first stages after that is that you'll know good from bad and right from wrong. We're all taught those things when we're young, or we should be at least. And, the next stage is, like, I guess, between 18 and 24. So at that next stage in life, you also begin to evolve more. And that learning curve and growth curve and learning and growth rate, it continues to follow all of us throughout our lives, because as more stimulus is put in front of us, more experiences, more things we see and learn and take in, good and bad, the more we evolve. So between the ages of, I say, like 18 and 24, you're at a next stage where you fully should be understanding what is fair. You should fully be understanding consequences of a thing, whatever that thing may be. So, they said, when I was a child, I spake as a child, right? But when I grew up, I put away childish things. As you evolve, the expectation rises with you, and so does the level of responsibility. And, again, I have to repeat it. Having your back should not be a full-time job. When you're 18 to 24, no one should have to tell you that you need to go to sleep to get enough rest so that you can function the next day. But because a lot of times we're still young, not babies, but we're still young, we think we're invincible and we can stay up all night and still go function properly. Now, you may be able to with a limited capacity, or to some extent, but it's not wise to create those kind of habits, because in the longest of long runs, it will come back to show you that's not necessarily a smart way to be. But many of us, we do that. But we have to also understand that at that time of our lives, we're expected to be more mature. We have a good general sense of how the world works, or how society works, right? Because for some of us, we would have gone to high school and to college, or to some kind of a trade school, which makes sense, so that you can further your life or further your career, right? What it is that you're going to do, or what it is that you want to stand for in life, what's going to be your job, your career. You have to decide that. And at that point in life, hopefully, if you've been exposed or raised a certain way, you will have a better idea of what those things are and what that is. But, there's another stage beyond that 18 to 20 something year old stage. And that's when you really become more seasoned, right? again, you've had even more experiences, more ups, more downs. You've seen things, you've been rejected, you've had surprises, you've experienced milestones, right? And this is very real. And it's also uh, supposed to be a part of your life experience. And, you should at that point, again, have a general working knowledge of society. At that point, you should also, um, or you're expected, as we say, you're supposed to have a bank account and a house and, a car and honestly, again, this does not apply to everybody. And if I use myself as an example, I can be honest enough to tell you that I've always had a job, and that was not my issue. My issue was being able to save enough money that I could keep. But because I was a substance abuser, I didn't keep a penny. I had a bank account that only had the check from check to check to check, and that's how I was living. That's the truth. I did not have a house, did not have a condo, and all that kind of stuff. These are things that just did not happen. And my family life was fragmented, broken up family, single parent family. Look, these things shape us and they determine who we are and how we're going to be as adults and how we're going to function in society. And a lot of times we just don't realize that. So we act out, and I think it's understandable and it's reasonable to expect people to have bumps in the road, but you should not be having the same bumps time and time and time again. Now, I know people and I know people that have had those same bumps in the road over and over again, multiple times. I can't say that you're not supposed to have more than 3 or 4 bad experiences in a given area, but there should be a time that if you're having a negative experience with the same exact thing, and it's happened more than 2 to 3 times, the light should come on in your mind to let you know that either something or someone is out to, or that there is something that you are not paying attention to, or something that you are not doing, which is not helping you. And that's part of, understanding life, which is the next point. You have to learn to understand the process of life. And I don't mean in technical terms. I don't mean, scientific jargon. No, just the common sense flow of life. And I say that because a lot of times, we may not realize that there are things that we should do, but we're expecting someone to tell us. And if no one has prepared you for life, it's hard to say that it's your fault. I get that. But if your colleagues are doing it, if you've seen it in TV and movies, if you've seen commercials, if you've seen it in magazine articles, or you've been able to reference it in those places, there comes a time when you have to learn to use this in a different way. And sometimes we have to learn how to learn, right? That sounds crazy, but it's important. Sometimes we have to learn how to learn. But I am a big advocate that when we fall on our face, that's a good learning opportunity. It's a teachable moment because no one wants to keep falling on their face. And again, when I talk about that learning curve and that growth curve and that learning and growth rate, that never ever leaves you. If you're not always learning, you're stagnant. And if you're stagnant, pretty much you're dying. You're dying mentally. Sometimes you may even be dying physically because you're not growing, you're not evolving, you're not doing. And the worst thing we can do as people is to allow ourselves to die off because we choose not to grow. And there lies the difference. Do you want to grow? Because you can grow with or without responsibility. You can grow just living for yourself in the moment, or you can grow with the expectation of having a long reach or I should say big picture. You can grow with the expectation of having a big picture experience, meaning that whatever it is that you're growing is going to help you, next week, next month, next year, in your job career, in your business, or in your personal endeavors or your personal relationships. And that's really key. And a lot of us miss that. And it's at this point that we're older, you have to understand that there's certain things you have to avoid, and there's certain things that you have to learn to embrace. So again, having your back 24/7, why should that even be? It should not even be. And many people have that mindset, that mentality. Well, if you don't got my back, you ain't really cool, or you don't really care about me, or you don't really, know me, or you ain't real. But what part do you play in that scenario? Are you responsible for the thing that you're needing someone to back you up for? So again, you're supposed to be able to understand at that stage in life that there are things that you need to do. You need to learn how to avoid and embrace the same things. You need to learn how to avoid certain people, places, and things. And you need to learn how to embrace certain people, places, and things. And that will keep you where you need to be for the most part. Now, I know everyone has a bad occurrence. Car goes out of commission, get a flat tire. It's hard to make ends meet to pay the rent, et cetera, et cetera. I understand that. But in being responsible for you, you will always find a way if you're really evolving in life. There's always a way if you search for it. There's a passage that says, knock and the door shall open, seek and you shall find. You know what I'm saying? And if you do those things, if you knock, you seek, and you ask, things can come to you. But as they say, a closed mouth never gets fed, right? So learn to knock so the door can open, seek so you can find, and ask and it shall be given to you. That's important. So in addition to that, excuse me, we have to understand, and I do understand, that the first law of nature is the preservation of man, preservation of self. But again, the topic, if your only focus is on what you can get out of the situation, then you're looking at it wrong. And I understand that we all want to have a particular thing, be able to do a particular thing. I get that. But sometimes you have to look at it a little differently. If you really care about yourself, then what can you do for yourself versus expecting someone else to do something for you? Why is it that you don't speak up for yourself instead of expecting someone else to feed you the information or ask you the information? It's so important that we take ownership of our lives, and there's no one responsible but us. And that is very critical. Many times we don't realize how important it is, but it just simply is. And part of that, knowing the first rule of life is a preservation of self. The first law of nature is a preservation of self. You have to understand that sometimes you will be humbled because you're going to find yourself in a situation and you may not have the resources, or you may not know who you can reach to for, support. And that's a part of life as well, a big part. There's a level of humility that we all have to reach at times in life. And I don't know if it's a test or if it's what it is, but actually I think it may be just that. It may be a test at times, because no one's going to always be on top of the world. No one's going to always have, the best experience. No one's always going to bowl and get a perfect score. That's not going to happen. We have to know that times will not always be up. Sometimes we will be facing a bad period in our lives. Yet, it's still not anyone's responsibility to constantly have your back. You know what I'm saying? That's just not a realistic outlook on life. And it's not something that you should even want, honestly. You should want to know that people are there for you just as you are there for them. And sometimes it's in the exact same way, but sometimes it's in different ways. That is part of the uniqueness of relationships. See, you bring one skill and talent that you've been blessed with. I may bring another skill and talent that I've been blessed with. And again, there are always exceptions to every rule, but you have to understand it for what it really is. So know that there is no it's supposed to be. There's not supposed to this or it's supposed to. Those things are not very real. There is no supposed to be. You know, life is a game, but not a game with rules like a board game. There's no 24-second clock. Things happen constantly. There's no out of bounds. The only out of bounds is you will be out of bounds if you don't know what to do when you need to do it. Now, you can't always say that it's not fair and think that's going to justify things. It's just not that way. So if you're a person that has relied heavily on your network, that's great. But can your network rely on you? You may want to ask yourself that. Again, there are exceptions, excuse me, to every rule. I mean, of course, if a person is handicapped physically or mentally, if a person is a senior in their age and that they're not able to do for themselves or care for themselves, those are definitely exceptions. But for those of us that are willing and able, we have to learn how to get out there and do for ourselves and be the supporter for others as we would want someone to be the supporter for us. Now, I mean, you may or may not agree with this, and I understand that, but that's the reality that we're facing. And again, when you're in crisis, the worst thing you can do is look at things one way. Every street has two sides, right? And you have to understand that because it's the same thing in life. Life is not just your way. It's your way, and it's the way other people see it as well. It's great if people see things the same way. Perhaps if they see things the same way and they are there with you, they will be able to support you in the way that you need support because you guys are on the same page, you're in lockstep, and it's all great. But it's not going to always be that way. We have to learn how to think for ourselves. That's the real. We have to learn how to think for ourselves. And again, this message is really for people that may need a different perspective. Everyone doesn't need to hear this. Everyone isn't that way. But there are times when, we have to think for ourselves as it relates to how we pull ourselves out of a rut, as it relates to, decisions that we have to make. I remember one of the most important things that one of my mentors told me was trust yourself. And I didn't want to hear it at the time because I wanted them to give me some direct answers for a direct question that I have. And even though I still would have liked it and appreciated it, in addition to the advice I was given, the fact that I was not given the answer and I had to search within was huge because I began to say and to see that the things that come out my mouth are important and impactful. It may not be the way my mentor does it, but it's the way that Charles does it and the way that it resonates for Charles and the people that see Charles and look to Charles for whatever, this would resonate to them. You see, if I'm regurgitating someone else's idea, it has merit, but it's not the same. That same mentor told me that if two of us are the same, one of us is not needed, right? So why not do it in my style, with my format, right? And that's the same thing I'm suggesting for you. Think for yourself. Understand that this is critical, especially in times of crisis, and that the responsibility is on us. Because if I give you advice and things don't pan out, you may blame me for the advice that you've taken from me. Now, we can work on it together, but if you're just going to take my advice, come on, have some skin in the game. Another thing is you have to be accountable. Be accountable for the decisions you make. That's how you grow. You stretch yourself. That's how you grow. And sometimes it's scary, it's risky, but it's a necessary part of growth. And realize everybody doesn't think like you, feel the same way you do about something, and they don't have to. So although you may be upset about it, you may not like it, you may be opposed to it, I get that. You're entitled. But you have to understand their motives and their interests may be like yours to a point. It may not be like yours at all, and it may be exactly like yours. But that's a part of life, and it's a part of growing. And people do this all the time. So as I would say, having your back should not be a full-time job. And it should not be a full-time job for them, and it should not be a full-time job for you either. So if you have any comments, I would love to hear your comments. I want to know what you think. I want to know what it is that you have to say. If this was helpful, let me know. If it wasn't, I understand. Maybe it wasn't for you, but by all means, share your comments. I would love to hear your comments and answer any questions and share it out as much as possible so that other people can be exposed to information that may help them radiate the brain and change the game. Take care.